if you really believe in something, you've just got to go for it without thinking about the judgment side of it, which I think, probably 99% of people will be held back by that fear of judgment.
Welcome to the I Also Want Money podcast, where our mission is to democratize, demystify, and demasculinize making money. My name's Nicole Kyle, and I'm here with my co-host, Sophie Holm, and co-producer, Harrison Comfort. Our mission at I Also Want Money is to empower women. We focus on financial empowerment, but we also talk about how confidence around money and wealth helps us build agency and confidence in other aspects of our life. Economic agency for women is not just about the workplace, and it's not just about investing. It's about what we see on screen, our mental health, our dynamics with friends and partners, and even our relationship with sex. Today, we're exploring the link between sexual confidence, financial confidence, and confidence as a successful entrepreneur with none other than Emma Sayle, CEO and founder of the KK Group. Emma, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Now, for those not yet in the know, the KK Group is a group of companies that empowers women to make connections socially, sexually, romantically, and professionally. It includes brands Killing Kittens, Safe Date, and Sister. Emma, tell us about your journey to entrepreneurship and sex entrepreneurship in particular.
It probably started as a kid. I was always basically quite just feisty and was questioned everything. And I had a real interest in girls and women. And in my head, the whole, well, if boys can do that, why can't we do it? That's a bit in me, and that's the bit that drives me. And I mean, for example, when I was 8, I started playing the trombone because I was in an all-girls school and no one else in the school played the trombone. And I was like, well, if boys can do it, I'm going to do it. I stopped when I was 16 because I was an awkward 16-year-old who thought it wasn't very feminine. And then at the same time, I was in an all-girls boarding school for 10 years from the age of 8 to 18. But I was going home, and my home throughout my whole teens and up and university was out in the Middle East, in Egypt and then Kuwait. And so I was seeing the way women and girls were treated out there. But then I was at a school in England where we were taught that we could do whatever we wanted and be whatever we dreamed of being as girls. And it was just sort of this real mishmash of messages, which just sort of added to the curiosity and actually added to that kind of fire in my belly, as I call it, that wanted me to kind of change things and go, well, that's not right. And just change the sort of social dynamic. And the sexual side of it sort of was when I came out of university and into the big wide world, and went into working in finance, financial PR, and had a couple of sexual harassment issues with a boss, and complained and was told I'd be a troublemaker if I took it further, and I probably wouldn't get a job in the city because everyone knows everyone. It just, again, made me more and more angry. And at the same time, just out and about, if women had a one-night stand, you were slut-shamed. And a lot of girls didn't even want to tell their closest girlfriends if they'd sort of had a one-night stand and got drunk, and because they just had that stigma and thought they'd be judged. And guys would have this whole, well, I've met a really nice girl, but they're not girlfriend material. And it'd be like, well, why? And they'd go, well, because she slept with loads of people, so that makes her not girlfriend material. It was just making me more and more angry and thinking this isn't balanced and it's really unfair. And why can men sexually be out there and get high five for sleeping around and having lots of women, and women are judged and can't explore their sexuality and, can't even talk about it with their closest friends for fear of judgment. And it was sort of the time when Sex and the City came out on television, and suddenly there was this group of women talking about vibrators and their sex lives, and Summers hit the high streets over in the UK. And, sex toys like the Lalo brand went into Selfridges. So there was this sort of couple of years of kind of, and the media was saying this female sort of sexual revolution going on, but I wasn't seeing any changes in society. I started helping do the PR for the Erotica show. And that found in that, that's the big sort of trade and B2C show at the time in Olympia. And it had everyone to do with the adult industry in it, from porn to toys to lingerie, just everything. And again, what I was finding was it was all these brands claiming to be female friendly, claiming to be for women and having women at the core, but they were all owned by men and run by men. And it got me thinking more and more into the difference for sex when it comes to men and sex when it comes to women. And that's basically how I kind of came into Killing Kittens. I wanted to do something. And then actually it was a three-day wedding in Ibiza and I hadn't slept for 3 days. And someone phoned into the groom and said, you couldn't make the wedding, and said, are you guys just all sat around killing kittens at the moment? Which is actually just a slang for, every time you masturbate, God kills a kitten. So if you're just sort of playing with yourself and sat around, then you're killing kittens. And I just went, right, that's it. That's what I'm calling it. And I like KK, and K is a very powerful letter. And it just was, I wanted to create something and flip it on its head, the norms of the women being in control, and it to basically provide a safe space online and offline for women to explore their sexuality without any judgment, and be in chat groups, online chat groups, and also, the offline events, to actually find other women that they can openly talk about and realize that they're not weirdos, they're not sluts, that it's perfectly natural and just belong to this community. So that's sort of how it all started in 2005, and then it's kind of snowballed since then.
It's so fascinating. I think there's still, we probably come further than when you started this journey, but we have still such a long way to go. And how did you end up focusing on sex parties as your kind of starting point in this venture? Why not pornography for women or sex toys for women?
They were, toys and everything was already out there, and it wasn't. And again, as I said, the poor modern toys were sort of run by men, but that wasn't changing the conversation. It's not, launching a porn company or launching sex toy company isn't changing that conversation, isn't providing that community, isn't allowing a space for women to openly explore their sexuality in an actual physical way. They're still very much in private. Porn is private, toys are private. It's not opening it up and kind of creating a community to create a movement, if that makes sense. So and at the time, this was before, and also it was before the digital world had really exploded. Back in 2004, 2005, Facebook really was only just beginning to happen. And in those years, it was still, amongst students. So so everything was very offline. You did everything offline. And so the parties and events was that community set up, and doing these offline monthly events where they could come together, and we didn't let single men in. Every man had to be accompanied by a girl. And the main rule was that men couldn't approach girls. They didn't know the women did all the first moves. So it was sort of an event, a night out where you flip the usual behavior on its head. And I always said that sex was actually sort of a byproduct of that. It was a space, if people wanted to have sex, they could have sex and explore in any way they wanted to. But it wasn't a case of you walk through the doors, you have to get naked and you have to have sex. That was sort of the perception of that is very much thanks to the Daily Mail headlines. So that's kind of why from sort of day one, it was like they're these sex parties. But actually, they've always been very different from this sex party setup, because actually a lot of people that come don't have full-on sex. You get groups of girls that dance around in their lingerie because that makes them feel empowered, and that no one jumps on them, and that's all they need. And you get other people that come down, keep all their clothes on, they just like the vibe and the members and that whole kind of just sort of socializing with like-minded people. So there's loads of elements to it with, as I said, if you want to have sex, you can have sex. It's there, and the playrooms are there. But if you stay sort of around the bar area of all these events we do, it's like just being at a house party or a club night. And what you might do is see more people dressed in their underwear than you would normally. But the actual full-on sex, it doesn't happen sort of right in your face in the kind of social areas.
I have so many wild images in my head.
Sure.
What is one of, I have to ask, what is one of the craziest memories that you have from one of these parties that you've held?
To be honest, the one like early doors was actually, and when it was sort of, it was properly taboo with women being really open. And I mean, now we get big groups of girls coming along and they're wild. It was actually seeing 3 girls all with strap-ons, with the 3 of them all at it, and it was just one of those moments where I remember saying, if you had a camera and could actually make, sort of home porn videos and stuff, this literally would knock the socks off any 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 porn out there. It was amazing. They just sort of, yeah. I remember because I was only, I was 25 then, so it was sort of, even though I was organising it, it was still an eye opener every event.
I can
now
only
it's
imagine.
just like, whatever now.
Emma, I just want to come back to something that you mentioned when we started the conversation around a big impetus for beginning the KK group and Killing Kittens was noticing the taboos around sex and women being empowered sexually. One of our other podcast guests, we talked to a wealth psychologist in one of our very early episodes. She made the really interesting point that for some women, talking about money is more taboo than talking about sex. And I think just as you ran through some of the societal things that really prompted this need for a space like Killing Kittens, they really mirrored the same pressures and biases and signals we get from society about women and their relationship to money and wealth, and that wealth is a man's game. And, what is a woman doing investing or trying to be an angel investor and all these other things. So anyway, that's a long way of me trying to ask, what's your take on that relationship between money and sex?
But I think it goes hand in hand. I think it all comes down to psychology, and a woman's, our psychology. We're not wired the same way men are, in that we do worry about what people think. We do, think we sound like arses if we remotely big ourselves up, or there's that imposter syndrome. And to me, the thought, I get really embarrassed talking about money, or if someone asks me about money, I just think, oh, I sound like a twat. I think I sound like a twat if I say I'm an entrepreneur. It's a real female psyche of, oh, everyone's going to think, I'm a real dickhead. Sorry, excuse my French. If I remotely talk about money or investment and sound, like I'm sort of bigging myself up, or I own this business. Men, you say, what do you do? Oh, I own this business. But people say, what do you do? And I just go, oh, I run. It tends to be the thing, I run a whole group, of businesses, and then I'll say what it is. It still sounds to me as though I own. I'd never say I own. I think it is that, it's just that female psyche that we just have to have that confidence and to back ourselves. I think that's the thing. It's just, the way men do. They just go in and own it. And we don't.
Exactly. Yeah. And Emma, do you think there's a link between improving your confidence sexually and improving your confidence financially, or vice versa?
Yeah, massive. To be honest, I think the sexual one would go first, because that's your core. Your sexuality is what drives you as a human being, no matter who you are, what religion, what race, background, culture. Your sexuality is your core drive. And if you have that not under control, but if you're confident and aware of it, and you know what makes you tick, and you own it, and you own your sexuality, and you own your sexual confidence, then that literally will just ripple into every other area of your life, from your professional life to your, friendship groups, just business relationships, and into wealth, confidence. That's the thing. To own yourself is to own your sexuality. And then it sort of translates into the rest of the world, your world around you.
Yeah, I actually read a really interesting study. I don't know how scientifically proven it is, so caveating that. But it did say that it had found that the more sexual activity you have, the more linkage there is to higher income, because they found that obviously the correlation with improved physical fitness, mental health, emotional well-being, the psychology of all the things you're talking about now. So I think like a key takeaway here is more sex, more money.
Well, yeah. Exactly. And it's, endorphins and confidence, it's what orgasms give you and a sex life gives you. Yes, there are people out there who are asexual, who have no interest in it, and that's, completely understandable and acceptable. But, for most people, they're, once you awaken the beast, so to speak, then the world is your oyster.
What's so incredible is as you talk about your venture and killing kittens, what I'm realizing is you're really creating safe spaces. Yeah. It's not about a sex party necessarily. It's not about what people do when they come in the room. It's the vibe and it's the security and the safety of women are permitted to be who they are and they're permitted to be powerful in this space. Yeah. And whatever that means for you as a woman, go and
explore it. I think that's a big part of it, like a space to explore if that's something for you.
Exactly. And you just, we all want to be empowered to be our best selves. That sounds cheesy, but that's kind of, we get a lot of women saying, who come and join members because they come out of abusive relationships or, strict religious backgrounds. And they just, we get amazing emails saying that they just found their confidence because they were doing it for themselves and they were getting that empowerment from being members and being part of the world that they felt they owned. So a big part of, the KK world is our members feel like it's theirs and they own it. And that to us is really important.
And Emma, the other thing, just as you were kind of walking us through your journey that really struck me is you've created spaces, initiatives, platforms that solve the societal issues you've identified, which is such a cool message, I think, for our folks who listen to this podcast who are entrepreneurs or who are just trying to tap into their own sense of power. It's if you don't see something out there, like go and create it, because that's what you've done.
Yeah, no, that's something we have in the office. I've got a partner that came on board for 4 years ago. He's now our CEO and very much sort of my partner in crime. And kind of as we've gone on, it's snowballed the last 4 or 5 years, and sort of Safe Date's come out and Sister platform has come out. But the more we've gone digital and tech, the more doors slammed in our faces or kind of roadblocks that just won't move because we're considered adult and industry and that kind of thing. And what we've done, and it's a standing joke in the office, is like, well, if there's nothing out there to help us in that area that we're trying to find help on, we'll build it ourselves. So we keep building stuff, to fix things. And actually what we're building, we're building a whole brand platform on the back of the KK platform, so that adult brands, and we call them adult safe for work brands, and that could be lingerie, it could be alcohol companies, ones that can't do digital marketing in the usual way across social media platforms, can use our platform. So when we build stuff, it's not just to help us, but it's also to help everyone else out there who's in the same position. And it's very much sort of a joke in the office. It's like, right, what can we build now? what can we fix now?
What can we fix? And definitely want to come back to some of like the roadmap and products that you're looking at and building in the future of everything that you're doing. But just before we do that, I'm sure this has not been a journey without its challenges and some failures along the way, potentially some big fiascos. Can you talk a little bit about some of those experiences and how important they've been in shaping you as an entrepreneur?
Someone asked me a couple of years ago, I was like, what's your biggest failure? And I was like, well, there hadn't been failures. And actually I then look back, and there's been loads, there's been loads of sort of event concepts that just don't work, and, I've made big losses. And it's funny because I have that sort of real bloody minded mindset. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs have it, and you don't see failures, if that makes sense. You don't see them until you look back years later and go, well, actually, that was a massive failure. Because at the time, you just instantly pivot. You go, it's not working, we'll go this way. It's sort of just a kind of a shrug off. But I think, the hardest part of the journey has actually been the nature of what it is and the fact that it's sex. And that has come with huge judgment. It's come with losing friends. It's come with abuse almost daily. To me, that it's that battle that is the one that just keeps going. And it's still there, even though society's changed and post Me Too. It's not so much, the failure. That's been my battle, is that personal psychological battle where you just wake up and, it happens almost weekly of, why am I doing this? And that's the hardest part, because you've also got to protect, you've got a whole family around you that you've got to protect as well, who are defending you, which you don't really notice at the beginning because you're so one-track minded and I'm such a, the cause type thing. It's only been sort of the last few years I look back and go, do you know what, I had sort of this whole team around me, friends and family, who were fighting and defending me left, right, and centre every time they were out. That's been a huge challenge and still is a huge challenge. But, on a business level, I started with nothing, as in with no funding, and it was one event a month. So there hasn't been anywhere where loads of, money has just gone on a massive failure, because it's sort of been this really gradual growth. And the first decade was very much hand to mouth. And it's only been the last sort of 4-5 years when suddenly you go into the tech digital world, where actually in the last couple of years we've had to get funding on board and go into debt, because that's what happens in tech and high growth at the beginning. That, now if it falls flat on its face, if you ask me in a year's time, I go, wow, that was a huge 6-figure loss that failed monumentously. But up until now, there hasn't been a huge amount of risk on a business level. It's just the risk on the personal level that's always been there.
I hate to hear that abuse daily is something you've had to go through and live with in this industry. But just for even my own understanding, obviously harassment, I can imagine things like verbal abuse and media abuse. Is that the kind of abuse you're talking about?
You've got social media now, so you open, I would say the higher you go, as in the more you put your head out at the top, the more you can be shot down and the more people know about it. And there's more and more, the whole trolling, and people out there who have nothing better to do than, just sit there trolling through Twitter. And I mean, Twitter's the worst. I'm barely on it, to be honest. And it's all just really miserable men, to be honest. But you just get everything, from being slut shamed and disgusting and told you're going to hell. And but to be honest, I learned very quickly to develop a thick skin. And actually, I've got a kind of weird psyche now that actually every time I get it actually makes me happy, because I think the day I don't get such a strong reaction from people is the day that I'm not doing something that matters. Actually, someone could sit in front of me and be so abusive to me, and I will instantly take it as a compliment, which sounds a really weird, thing, but it's been years of kind of training and turning the psychology around to kind of have a bit of empathy and understanding of where these people are coming from in their own lives and their own headspace. And a lot of it is coming from their own insecurities, their own sort of unhappiness in relationships and being blocked and frustrated, and they'll project it. So some of the most abusive people I've had, actually, I know that they haven't been happy in the relationships they're in. They're kind of in their dark sort of center, want to actually be involved. And there is that jealousy and resentment a lot of time as well from other women, that I've sort of gone out there and done stuff without really caring what people think and without caring about the judgment. And I think there's a lot, especially women out there who inside have ideas to do stuff, but they're just so worried about what people will think and of being judged that they never do it.
The liberty you must feel around not caring so much, I can understand why people are jealous of that. As we are also trying to get something off the ground and trying to build something, and it is scary. It's scary to, like, the fear of failure is very real.
Yeah, completely. And I think the older I've got, and when I turned 40 a couple of years ago, I said, that I've got worse every decade about not caring. And now in my 40s, literally, I care about, what my close friends and family think. And after that, and actually changing your mentality to be like that, it opens up so much more potential and so many more opportunities, because I think fear of judgment holds so many people back. And stop so many people, because you're so worried about what other people think. And the minute you let that go and just go with your gut and go, you have it in you, that passion and that core. And if you really believe in something, you've just got to go for it without thinking about the judgment side of it, which I think, probably 99% of people will be held back by that fear of judgment.
It's such a powerful reframe for anyone trying to do something different, go against the grain, to think about the abuse you get from online trolls and so on really as a compliment. It means you're doing your job, and it means you're pushing boundaries which for women is really important today because the world is not as it should be for us in many, many ways.
So I'm super curious, how has COVID impacted what you guys do?
It has made a large dent in our event revenue, but over 60% of our revenue is coming from our digital online platform already. We were in the middle of moving all the education and kind of workshops into the virtual world, so that we just sped up, and now we've been doing sort of 2 virtual workshops a week, and the joy is that anyone from all over the world can attend them. Whereas offline virtual workshops and the education talks and stuff we were doing, you had to be in that city to attend. So actually it's broadened our offering when it comes to the educational side, because we have talks on Instagram live talks I do on a Wednesday night with different experts all over the world. And then the workshops as well. So we've gone up thousands. We've gone from sort of maybe 30, 40 people attending them offline to in the thousands, having exposure to them in the week. And then at the weekends we have virtual house parties, and we do them on different times. Sydney time zone, New York time zone, we do girls only ones. So every weekend there's 1 or 2 that go on a Friday night. And again, we're going to keep all that going, because actually we've had a lot of people join them who have never been to an actual event, because they said, so they've never been brave enough to buy a ticket, or they're in a different country. And actually it lets sort of 20 different nationalities be in one event at the same time. And to us, that kind of we've got a big global community, and it actually goes hand in hand with what we're about. So I mean, obviously it will be nice when we can get the offline events back up, but it's been very obvious from week 1 that we will keep all the virtual events we've been doing forever. They're just another sort of stepping stone and make sense business wise.
Well, I actually also think so. I just signed up for your Spanking 101 workshop that's coming up.
But we've had really interesting ones actually.
I'm excited, but I think part of what I could imagine is people's responses to you guys going more digital in these workshops. It lowers the barriers to attending, because if you are new to this, you can hide a little bit behind your screen.
Exactly.
And just get a little bit of a taster for it, get an opening, and as you get more comfortable, it allows you to get more and more involved in your community and the discussions, and being more open and confrontational about the different topics you're discussing.
Yeah, exactly. And we found, they're all selling out really fast. And we're finding a lot of new members joining up, coming into, because I think, what's happened in lockdown is actually a lot of couples, and also a lot of, singles have been able to stop and go, actually, we're not happy about that. And we're not happy about that. And we've been putting up with that. And we haven't been communicating about actually what it is we want, or fantasies or thoughts. And, and it's made people just be selfish for a while. And really look at themselves and what makes them tick. And I think that's really going to help when we come out of it, people coming out into sort of the dating world, or couples coming out, the ones that aren't divorcing after lockdown, but coming out being much clearer as to what they want in their relationship sexually. And more wanting to explore and get out there, and you've got one life to live it. So sod it, let's go to this workshop and let's go to this party.
What do you think the future of sex parties is going to look like? I'm thinking, virtual reality. I'm thinking augmented reality. Do you think, is that something you guys are kind of exploring?
Yeah, we've had, we've looked at VR stuff, and we are for our new platform. And I don't think nothing's going to replace ever that human in physical interaction. Nothing, no amount of tech, AI, VR, I can't, there's so many bloody letters out there of the digital tech world and offerings and robotics. It will never, ever, ever replace that human physical chemistry and interaction. And so there will be all of this happening, and there will be all this digital tech world of sex where people don't have to leave their houses. But at the end of the day, humans need that human interaction, and they want it. So we're still going to have, our full-on events. Sex parties and orgies have been going on for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So they're not suddenly going to stop because the digital tech world have all these different offerings, because you can't, as I said, human interaction, physical interaction, and that energy. And I said it the other day that I'm just so over Zoom meetings and events, because they just suck your soul out, because you don't have that energy you get when you go into a room and see your friends, and you pick up on energies of people, and you don't even have to touch them, you can feel it, and it just fills your soul. And you don't get that with anything to do with the digital tech world.
Yeah, the Zoom fatigue is real.
I'm so over it.
Emma, just thinking about where KK Group is today and where it's going. You closed a funding round in 2019, and you're closing another one now on Cedars. Just curious, could you expand a little bit on the not only the decision to go from self-funded to getting investment, but what was your experience like seeking funding from VCs or investors who, I'm guessing, A, are mostly men, and B, probably rarely invest in the type of stuff you're doing?
Well, do you know what? It was like 4 years ago, and I was a little bit, it's when I kind of saw that our figures were kind of 50% online, 50% offline, and we were a small team of really offline people. And I thought, if there's no one running this online side of it, and I've basically reached as far as I could go as a person and my skill set. And that's when I joined forces with Hadley Bolt, who is our CEO now, and he's a complete tech strategy guru, and he's the real yin to my yang. And we were looking initially at sort of VCs, and it just didn't fit well. We had some meetings, and I pitched a few, and it was men, and they just see sex, and it was like it's just not right. And I said, I just don't want 5 Billy Big Balls, city boys going around going like, I own a sex party set up, because that's not what we're about, and that's not where we're going. And also we've had this, it's always been about community and women, and it was like, well, actually, we want our community feel like they own a bit, and we want all our women members to be able to put a tenner in to feel like they've owned it. And so that as soon as we made the call to go down the crowdfunding route, it just felt right. And the first time we did it, and I was sort of, when we started that run, I was 7 months pregnant with my third child, and we put it out there. It was just, it was like terrifying, because sort of we'd been in this underworld of sort of the sex world, and we were suddenly putting it out there publicly. And I didn't know, what the abuse would be, and we ended up, I think, over 800 investors that first round, and we overfunded in sort of 3 weeks, and actually closed it 2 days before my due date. And I remember pulling over and sobbing into my steering wheel, and just saying, I don't know if it's hormones, I don't know what's going on. And then I had my baby like 3 days later. I knew she'd be late. I said, she's not coming out until this is closed. So that was a really, really humbling experience, because for the first time ever, I knew that our community had our back and believed in us. So we raised, I think, an evaluation of 5 million. And then we were looking at doing a Series A raise, but we realized actually we didn't need a huge amount. And if we could get all the tech built that we wanted to have built, and then go into a Series A at a later date, the valuation would be much, much more. So we did a bridging round raise last year. And we wanted like 300 grand, and we ended up with nearly 500 on that one. So we got nearly 600 the first one, when we wanted 500. And then for the kind of the bridging raise last year, we ended up with 500 again, and that was sort of within 2 weeks, and we were actually going, shut it. So they Cedars don't just suddenly shut it. There's a process, and then basically what's happened now with COVID is that the UK government, with all its sort of statements of, you can do this as a business, you can do that as a business, and we've got your back on this, and there's this loan and that, there's been this gaping black hole really for sort of companies not in profit that are high growth startup tech businesses that don't tick the boxes of all the government offers. And then they brought out this future fund option where the government will match it with the British Business Bank. It's sorry, dogs. Most complicated system. And you have to, basically, they'll match what you privately raise. So we had a sort of 7 days to do it. And we're overfunded, and I think we're closing it this week. So again, it's been, and then I think the government's been oversubscribed for that. So whether we actually get the match, we don't know. But we've overfunded in order to know that we've actually raised what we need without the government if it doesn't happen. So, but that, I mean, again, that future fund that they did was it was written by VCs and really aimed at big VC backed kind of post Series A companies. So again, we've fallen into this sort of hole that a lot of startups and small tech companies in the high growth initial stage, businesses have fallen in of there's not a lot out there for us. This is our only option we've got. So that's why we've had to do our third raise on Seeders in 2 years. So, but we've got amazing, community and members, and so they've been incredibly supportive.
Yeah, I think in the spirit of some of the things we're talking about too, that you chose to do that route and giving women the opportunity to participate with you in that is really great. A question, do you angel invest yourself?
I would if I could, but I have 3 children under 5. So let's just say the childcare bills are monumental. It's only been, as I said, with KK the last 3 years that it's kind of snowballing at pace. And so I haven't paid myself a huge salary. I've never taken money out of the business other than a salary. I think when it gets to the point where I'm able to do that, then as soon as I do, I'm able to take money out. And I have 3 kids at state school, not having to be paid for childcare wise. Then I definitely would love to fund, and definitely sort of female founded businesses. It's my passion, and I'd love to get behind it. And I mentor quite a few, and that's sort of what I can give at the moment. And honestly, these dogs do my head in. And one.
What kind of dogs are they?
They're 2 Cocker Spaniels and one, the old one. I'm just going to shut the door.
Oh my goodness. Emma, sorry to interrupt, but it's my dream to have 2 Cocker Spaniels. I dog sit for a pair of them. I'm obsessed. Anyway, sorry to take us off topic, but I'm a dog person.
It's father and son, and the father's just a really grumpy old man at the moment. So every time comes near us.
Sounds like it's parallels to the rest of the conversation we've had.
Yes. Emma, tell us more about Sister. You're disrupting networking.
Yeah, so we launched a beta platform last year, and we were actually about to do a raise in March. So we've put that back till the end of this year. And to us, the whole thing with Sister is that connection of women across all ages and all industries. So again, it's not industry specific, which is what a lot of networking setups are. It's also not that very black and white, clear cut mentor-mentee. It's to us is that actually every woman, regardless of age, has something to offer, has something to help. Like I could, someone who's coming out of uni age 21, I could probably learn a lot off. So it's not necessarily me being the mentor and her mentoring being the mentee. So to us, it's more the way women think, that kind of tribal sort of mentality and collaboration of helping each other out. And in a mixture, we were doing a monthly event, and then we've got sort of the different chat rooms and stuff online, and then we're going to put the whole different workshops online as well for sort of a premium level of membership. So to be honest, it's there is a sort of similar kind of parallel to KK in Sister, but it's for the professional lives of women.
We had another entrepreneur talk about how she had a reverse mentor, which is somebody from a very different background to her. So it was a Gen Z, African born, very techie boy, and she was a millennial woman from the US. And that reverse mentoring relationship has just given her so much in terms of understanding different perspectives. So I think that's a great thing about what you're talking about with the sister app. How has this relationship or this journey that you've been on with the KK group and everything you've been doing, how has it impacted your relationship or your thoughts on feminism?
To be honest, I think, I've mentioned to you before then that the word to be basically being a feminist was something that I wasn't comfortable saying for quite a long while. I think because there was this bad stigma on, I think a lot of women actually hadn't helped the cause by being real man bashers and sort of that, and to me, and us and them, and to me, I don't sit like that. And like even KK, even Sister, we, has always had men included, and the events we do with Sister, there's men included, because to me, everyone needs to be part of the conversation to make change happen. And we need to work together, and we would need to realize we're different, and use our differences to actually have this cognitive diversity that enables, the best decisions to be made. And so it's taken me a while to kind of embrace and feel comfortable, probably a bit like being called an entrepreneur, to be honest, to be able to go, yes, I'm a feminist. It's only really been the last few years or so, because I just didn't like the perception I had of being a feminist, because it was a very sort of man bashing, get offended if a man opens your door type woman. And that's just not me. Whereas now, I think the more I've done, and what the more society's evolved, stuff. It to me, being a feminist is very simple. If you believe that women have the same choice and freedom as men do, and the same control as what goes on in our pants, then you're a feminist. And whether you're a man or a woman, it's not a gender thing to be a feminist. It's a mindset that makes anyone a feminist. So I think the more that realization has happened, is the more actually, I'm very comfortable saying I'm a feminist.
Yeah, I think it's a very relatable journey to claiming feminism for me and a lot of our listeners. And what's so great about whatever wave of feminism we're in now is, to your point, Emma, there's this real shift around feminism means equality. It doesn't mean women are better than men, or vice versa, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. We're different, and we think in different ways and work in different ways. And it's about collaboration and just having as much diversity within teams and decision making as possible. And you see that, in businesses now, there's a lot more teamwork rather than an individual making calls. And that's important, whether it's race or gender, in that. Yeah.
Great. Well, Emma, as we think about wrapping up, we ask all of our guests on the podcast to share with us their I also statement. So our podcast is called I Also Want Money. We've had other experts claim, I also have a voice, or I also can start this. Would you like to share an I also statement that has helped you through your entrepreneurship journey?
Let me think. Do you know what? I also have a brain.
Yes.
It's been huge, because I'm a 6 foot blonde, and there's always been that, you're a woman, but you add the blonde thing to it. It's sort of the amount of men that literally have treated me like I'm literally this dumbass bimbo. It's and still do. It's extraordinary. So yeah, I think definite one thing, one of my insecurities, or something it's just sort of maybe a chip on the shoulder a bit that has got better, is that I've also got a brain. So and that should be respected. Yeah, I've got better and less defensive on that front.
It's really powerful.
Yeah, and thank you so much for taking the time. I know we kind of ran into a lot of discussion, and it ended up running a minute over. But we do really appreciate your time. It's been fantastic, and it's been really great discussing with you.
No worries, that was great. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you like what you're hearing, join us in the I Also movement. This means take to your social platforms and post a hashtag I Also statement. Follow us on Instagram at I Also Podcast, and of course, subscribe. This podcast is produced by Harrison Comfort, and the theme tune is by Malin Linnea.